Well, hello and welcome to this special news break. We are cutting out of the US programming to get you a very special interview. Vikram Limaye is joining us right now. He is the new Managing Director and CEO at the National Stock Exchange, the country's largest and premier stock exchange, which is, of course, on course to come out with a IPO very soon. The one thing which was, I think, awaited very keenly was the selection of the new CEO and MD, and we reported it first last week that Vikram Limaye, the man in charge of running IDFC for many years, is the man set to take charge at the National Stock Exchange. Mr. Limaye, thank you very much for joining us, sir. First of all, congratulations from all of us here. It's a big day for you.
Yeah, I certainly believe it's a unique opportunity to lead an institution like the NSE, which I believe is an institution of national importance. So I certainly welcome the opportunity, and I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Have all the hurdles been crossed in terms of the appointment itself, sir? Because, I mean, the selection panel recommended the name to the board. The board would have sent the name to SEBI, the SEBI chairman, and they would have had to sort of take off on this. So one assumes that we have the official release from the NSE. So everything, all the formalities have been sort of cleared on this one?
No, actually, if you look at the release, it should state that it is subject to approval of SEBI and shareholders. So SEBI and shareholder approval is still awaited.
But would you believe that is, I mean, obviously, without preempting, but that seems like a formality?
I mean, I wouldn't take anything for granted. I think it's an approval of the regulator and the shareholders, so we have to respect that process.
Right.
And so we will have to wait for the outcome of that process.
Right. Right. I mean, you are intimately have been involved with the financial markets for 2.5 decades in various capacities. You've held senior position at Credit Suisse First Boston before you came back to India to run IDFC. What do you think are going to be your priorities, as the CEO and MD at NSC?
See, I think as a start, what I would state is that, which I've stated before, NSE is a unique institution of national importance and has an important role to play in market development. I believe over the next few years, to fund the country's growth, will require market-related products and a more broad-based development of markets across different products. I don't think the needs of the country can be funded purely through bank financing. If you look at even the recent regulations that the Reserve Bank of India has come out with, they are actually cutting back on the exposure that banks can take to corporates in terms of single company and group exposure limits, etc. So that will necessarily require corporates to have other avenues to fund their growth, which will, again, have to be market-related instruments. So market development is extremely important for the country's future and to fund the country's growth. And the National Stock Exchange obviously has a very important role to play in that effort. So from that standpoint, that is certainly an important part of what the National Stock Exchange can contribute to the country's development. Obviously, it's got a very strong market share in the businesses that NSE is in. And from a business perspective, there will be opportunities to broaden the business footprint in different areas, different products, geographies, etc. So I think there's enough to do, given that the country should be on a growth path over the next several years.
Right, right. So introducing new products, contracts, etc., is an important part of that, right? I mean, at the NSE, it of course is the leader.
Yeah, it is a leader in many of the areas that it participates in. But the broader point I'm making is that there are many parts of the landscape that are underdeveloped, right?
Sure.
For instance, the bond market is underdeveloped. There will be products surrounding bond market development that will need to be developed, whether they are hedging products or otherwise. So the broader point I'm making is that there are various parts of the market that need to be developed, and the NSE has a very important role to play in that. Obviously, it will have positive implications from a business perspective as well for NSE.
So you have, of course, been dealing with regulators on a regularly, actually.
Yeah.
NSE, of course, has been involved in this case where there has been alleged impropriety, unfair access. I mean, you are, of course, well aware of the issue. What is your game plan going to be to put this behind the National Stock Exchange?
See, I'm not going to comment on the details or specifics of the matter because, unless I get involved in it, I will not have sufficient detail to comment on it. The limited comment I have is that obviously if there are any issues between NSE and the regulator that need to be sorted out, that would certainly be priority in terms of making sure that all those issues do get sorted out.
But have you already been briefed about the entire matter, or only once you take over would you sort of get into the nitty-gritty of the matter?
It's only, obviously I will try and get an understanding of what the issues are once I have the full approval of SEBI and shareholders, etc. But at this point in time, I do not have sufficient details surrounding these issues.
I mean, on that point, so when are you taking over officially?
So again, like I said, that is not yet decided because we have to go through this process and then take a call on what an appropriate date of joining would be.
Right. No, I mean, would you need time to wind up your sort of responsibilities, hand over charge at IDFC? I mean, so
yes,
essentially, if the approval from the regulators and shareholders, say, for example, were to come within this week, how long would you take at your end to sort of make the shift?
I don't want to get into that because, as I said, that has not yet been decided and discussed. So I don't want to comment on matters that have not been discussed.
Okay. The other, of course, big issue has been the IPO. I mean, NSE itself coming to the market with the initial public offering. We've seen the great response that the rival stock exchange BSE has gotten. And, people that we've been speaking with in the NSE, and of course, bankers involved as well, have been saying that, well, it's much better if NSE has a permanent CEO to kind of front with investors to do road shows and kind of generate interest. How much is that going to be? I mean, you basically would be hitting the ground running on that as well as soon as you take charge.
Yes, certainly that would be an important priority and a near-term priority to focus on. So that would clearly be an urgent thing to get done.
Right. And I mean, you are again somebody who's sort of faced investors in your earlier roles. You're very well versed with some of the largest investors. Would you believe there would be, I mean, what's the kind of interest that you gauge? I mean, you would already have a sense because these are people that would be invested in your earlier organizations as well.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously I was also involved in taking IDFC public in 2005, and then many rounds of capital raising after that as well. So I do have have experience in what it takes to go public and dealing with investors and institutional investors, etc. My own view is, given the quality of the institution, it should certainly be very well accepted by the market. I think in general, institutional investors and markets are very receptive to good quality organizations and good quality growth stories. From that perspective, I don't see any reason why NSE's IPO should not be well received.
So, you're also now involved with the BCCI. I mean, would you be wearing, I mean, essentially, what should we expect in terms of how that is going to proceed? Because that is also a big responsibility.
Yeah, so I don't want to get into BCCI as part of this conversation. Suffice to say that that is certainly not an operating role. NSE will be the priority. That is something that we have been tasked with by the Supreme Court of India. It is not running BCCI on a day-to-day basis. They have a full management team and an organization, etc. It is a limited purpose to try and get certain things done and then to step out. So it is an interim arrangement to get permanent people in place and then to step out. But priority obviously will be NSE, and I don't think there will be anything that will come in the way of my commitment and time to NSE.
Mr. Limaye, thank you very much, sir. Really appreciate you taking the time and speaking with us here on CNBC TV 18. Congratulations once again from all of us here. Thanks indeed.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks indeed. We'll wrap this up here. Thanks very much for being here. Stay tuned. More coming up.